Hi, I'm Rahel Philippos and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express News Show. In this episode, we talk about China's falling population and India's growing population and what it means for both the countries. We also talk about the row over Ramcharitmanas in Bihar. But first, let's talk about the 8 Indians who have been imprisoned in Qatar for the past 4 months. These 8 Indians are former naval officers who were first detained by authorities in Qatar back in August and have spent this entire period in solitary confinement. Recently, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar was asked about them in the parliament, and he said that this was a sensitive matter and that they are in constant touch with the Qatar authorities for it. But it's now been over a month since Jaishankar made that statement, and the confinement has only been extended. In this segment, the Indian Express's national editor for strategic affairs, Nirupama Subramanian, tells us about the imprisonment and what this issue means for Indian diplomacy. So Nirupama, can you first tell us what these former naval officers were doing in Qatar?
So these men who have been arrested and who are in the custody of the Qatari authorities, they are ex-Navy, Indian Navy, and they were working for a company called Dhara Global Technologies and Solutions, which is a service provider to the Qatari Emiri Naval Force. That's the full name for the Qatari Navy. And this company was providing all kinds of services. It was involved in the training of the Qatari Navy. It was involved in maintaining equipment. It was involved in providing logistical services. And the company was very well known in those circles. In fact, one of the people who is in custody, Commander Purnendu Tiwari, he was awarded the Pravasi Bharat Samman award in 2019 for furthering the bilateral relations between India and Qatar because of the role that he was performing as part of this company.
Right. And then the news came that they were arrested. Now, Qatar didn't inform the Indian embassy immediately. So how did their arrests actually come to light?
So these men were apparently picked up on the 30th of August, and the families were trying to get in touch, as families usually do. But I think for a couple of days they thought that they were away at sea perhaps, and therefore they were incommunicado. But as the days went by, about 3-4 days went by without them being able to get in touch. Then I think the alarm bells started ringing for these family members and they started getting worried. And then they found out from the company itself that these people had been picked up by the Qatari authorities. And the Indian mission, I think, was informed not immediately. My understanding is that they were informed sometime in the second week of September. And that is when they then started making efforts to find out what had gone wrong. And they were given a consular access on the 3rd of October. Now, what consular access means is that a diplomat in the mission there goes and meets the person or persons who are in jail. And, there is some conversation between them. The primary purpose of consular access is to find out their well-being as well as, whether they need any legal assistance. Also, it's an opportunity to find out what actually went wrong. I mean, what are they accused of or what's going on?
Okay. And did Qatar say what went wrong and why these 8 men were picked up?
No, so the charges have not been framed. I mean, in a legal sense, there's no formal charge sheet against them. And the Indian embassy has been telling the families that they have not been informed of the charges. The families are saying that they have also not heard from the Qatari authorities what these men are accused of and why they have been picked up. Let me add that it's not just normal jail. Each of these men has been put in solitary confinement. So from the 30th of August practically till date, they are in solitary confinement. And solitary confinement is very severe punishment. You don't give solitary confinement as a punishment for ordinary offenses. It is usually associated with security offenses. And security offenses meaning, betraying the nation in some way or the other, or espionage, spying. This kind of thing usually attracts solitary confinement. So solitary has triggered the speculation that, and given the kind of work that they were doing, which was with the Qatari Navy, it has triggered speculation that they were involved in some kind of espionage. Now, no one has said that formally. The Indian government definitely has not said that. When this question has come up repeatedly at the weekly briefings of the Ministry of External Affairs. So even if they were involved in a security-related offense, and even if it's a very serious offense for the Qataris to have put them in solitary confinement, espionage goes on all the time and various people are caught, but they're also released. So it need not take such a severe form that it casts such a big shadow over relations between the two countries. And many of these cases between friendly countries are usually resolved. It takes a lot of effort, but they do get resolved. So there is hope that this will get resolved as well. But as of now, there's really no word on how long this is going to continue, how long the incarceration is going to continue, and when the Indian government might be able to achieve a breakthrough in this matter.
So, Nirupama, you mentioned that this may affect the relationship between the two countries. Now, before we get into that, can you tell us what the Indian government is doing to ensure their release?
So they've said that they've been making the best possible efforts towards their release and to bring them back home safely. The mission in Doha has been given a second round of consular access at the end of December. So, what is really puzzling and what is really astonishing about this whole thing is that even after 2 rounds of consular access, the Indian side or the MEA says that it has no information about the charges. Because in a country that with whom you have friendly relations, this is routine. Somebody gets arrested, especially if it's a security-related offense, they would be informed immediately and they would be told quickly what the charges are. So it's a little puzzling that Qatar has not yet done that. In fact, that it took them so long to inform the Indian embassy in Doha that, these men are in their custody. And then it took them a further 2 weeks or so to give them the first round of consular access. So it's a little surprising that this has happened with a friendly country. One can imagine that something like this would happen with Pakistan. Like if they capture somebody who they allege is a spy or for any offense, it is likely that they will not inform the Indians immediately.
So Qatar is a friendly country and this behavior is puzzling. But India and Qatar's relationship faced a challenge last year when former BJP spokesperson Nupur Sharma made a derogatory comment about Prophet Muhammad during a live TV debate. After that, the Muslim world condemned the comment and Qatar was one of the first countries which raised an issue. They also summoned the Indian ambassador and expressed their strong protest, right? So all of this happened just before these 8 naval officers were arrested. So did the incident impact or influence these arrests in any way?
It's difficult to say that or it's difficult to make any connection. But yes, that was the first challenge. And this has come just 3 months after that. Otherwise, Qatar-India relations were humming along very nicely. From 2008 onwards, when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was the first Prime Minister to visit Qatar, there have been a lot of developments. And defense cooperation is described as one of the pillars of the bilateral relationship. And it involves training. Basically, it's all about naval cooperation, and the agreement specifically involves training. A defense cooperation agreement was signed in 2008 during Prime Minister Singh's visit. And that agreement specifically mentions training as one of the elements of that agreement. And this involvement of ex-Indian Navy officers was also seen as part of that cooperation. So yeah, it's come as a bit of a surprise, and it is taking so long to resolve is also a little bit of a surprise. And the fact that the MEA is constantly saying that they have no idea of the charges is also a bit puzzling, and it's worrying for that relationship because it means perhaps that we have not been able to tap the right levels of the Qatari leadership perhaps. On another level, maybe the Indians have an idea and they don't want to talk about it because perhaps the best way to resolve this is to keep a little quiet and not make a big issue out of it.
Okay, and Does this incident or how India is handling this incident reflect a shift in Indian diplomacy?
So the fact that they've taken a very low key, a low profile approach to this is in very much different from how Sushma Swaraj used to take up the causes of Indians in trouble abroad. She used to be very public in the way she took all these issues up on Twitter, then photo ops with the families, all those kind of things, which kind of reassured all Indians abroad that whatever trouble they might be in, India would somehow bail them out. It's a different case also. And maybe because it involves a security offense, it has to be dealt with in a little low profile manner. So I'm not sure if she always did the right thing and that this is the wrong approach, but it's definitely a shift in the approach.
Right. And Nirupama, can you tell us how this incident is impacting the expats living and working in Qatar?
So about 800,000 Indians live and work in Qatar. And it's the largest expat, the Indian community in Qatar. So I think to them, perhaps there is an uneasiness in the community because of this incident. And the fact that it is taking so long to resolve is also perhaps sending out the signal that maybe things are not as good as they were even up to last year. See, the two countries will mark 50 years of their diplomatic relations this year. And that will be a huge occasion. One doesn't know how that will be celebrated, that milestone. But if this is not going to be resolved by then, definitely it's going to cast a shadow on that anniversary.
Next, we talk about the population of two neighbours, China and India. Last year, China, for the first time ever, registered an absolute decline in its population. And in 2023, India's population will surpass China's according to a projection by the United Nations. Both these events will have an impact on the country's economies. And to talk about these implications and what the United Nations projection says about India, the Indian Express's Harish Damodaran joins us in this segment. So Harish, one thing that has been flagged while talking about the populations of China and India is the fertility rate or the replacement rate. It has a major impact on China's reducing population, and now India also registered a drop in fertility rate. So can you first explain what is this replacement rate?
See, suppose there is a lady, okay, and her partner. So there are two people, right? In order to replace themselves, that is two people with two people. So therefore, they need to produce at least two children. And of course, if it is an infant, some infants may not survive till adulthood, till they can become tomorrow's mothers and fathers. So generally, the replacement rate is taken at something like 2.1. That is slightly more than two children. That is the rate.
Right. So this replacement rate has fallen both for China and India, but India's population is growing.
See, China's total fertility rate, which is basically the number of children which a woman can give birth to during her lifetime, it had already fallen below replacement rate, that is below 2.1, I think by the early 90s, probably 1991. So it fell below. In the case of India, it fell below 2.1 only in 2019. So the total fertility rate coming below 2.1, which is a replacement rate, that happened in 1991. It happened almost about 2 decades before India. So I think the effects of that are now showing. So it takes a very long time for declining fertility rates to manifest itself in terms of absolute population declines. And the latest number, I think, in China is something like 1.3. That is, an average woman is giving birth to not even two children. I mean, we are talking in terms of mathematical figures. So obviously, if this rate was already, it had fallen well below 2% in 1991. So it was a question of time, So I think that's what has happened now. And I think now what they're saying is, I think the Chinese National Bureau of Statistics, they're saying that their population has fallen from 141.3 crore to 141.2 crore. I think something like almost about 10 lakh less people in 1 year. The rate at which fertility rates are dipping, I mean, it's very remarkable even in the case of India, because I think even India's fertility rate was 4 or something till 1990. And from 4, for it to halve to 2, that itself is a huge thing.
Okay, and what can be the possible reasons for this reducing fertility rate?
One is, of course, late marriages. Earlier, it would be maybe, they would have had maybe one baby by the time they were, say, 18, 19 or something. Whereas now it looks like, it could be 25, 26 plus. Because the more urbanized India becomes, and the more there is education and all these things, so you will find that the birth rate declines could be much more rapid. So even when we are talking of 170 crore, it may be an outer projection. Maybe we might even end up at 160 crore. And we'll find it very difficult for that to go up beyond 160 crore. Today it looks, 142 crore seems fine. But maybe our population would peak much earlier. I mean, going by the Chinese experience.
Okay, so China's replacement rate started falling in 1991 and the effects of it are showing now. On the other hand, India's replacement rate started falling in 2019. But even if it falls, India's population will continue to increase for the next few decades, and the effects of it will become visible later, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, see, we have not had a census. So whatever we are talking now is based on projections. We have data till 2011. But after that, what has happened? We don't know, the behavior. Has our marriage age, has it gone up? It looks like. And ultimately, all these things will be clear only in a census. And unfortunately, we don't have a census. And that's what the government should be doing. At the rate we are going, we may not cross 160 crore. I mean, people are talking of 170 crore. It may not cross 160 crore. I mean, that is my feeling. And I think China, we need to study very carefully, because the way their population has moved, the way their fertility rates have fallen. And of course, I hope that our fertility doesn't fall to 1.3 and 1.4 kind of a thing. I think 2, maybe 1.8 would be fine. Yeah.
Right. So, can you tell us what kind of economic implications China is looking at because of the reducing population?
See, China's main crisis is not the absolute decline in population, but probably the decline in the working age population. I think China, the median, that is the average age today is already 38 years, whereas we will probably hit 38 years in 2050 or something. So we have a young population, unlike China. China is already an aging population and their share of working population is steadily coming down. So when you have a high working population, say 60% or something, there are two advantages which come. So it means there are more people who will be able to work and generate incomes and savings. And there will be fewer dependents. So dependents would be both children as well as old people. I mean, so generally when countries, their working population as a percentage of total population goes up, that's the time when generally countries experience what is called the demographic dividend. They reap the demographic dividend because of a large number of people available for work and generating incomes, generating savings. And when you generate incomes, you also generate taxes. And because of that, the governments are able to spend on welfare, on health, on infrastructure, etc. So we know from China's experience that they experience maximum growth from the early 80s to maybe till around, say, 2011, 2012. And that was precisely the period when they had this demographic dividend, this period when the working population was high. Whereas now their working population is declining. And as I said, it's an aging population. So India's advantage is we have a youthful population. Our population is still, so both our population is rising and also the proportion of those who are of working age is also rising. So that's where India has an opportunity. So we are in that demographic sweet spot.
Okay, so a growing young population is an asset for India. But Harish, the Indian economy has been going through a tough phase, right? There's high unemployment, COVID impacted the economy negatively, and then there's the issue of inflation. So, considering all of this, what kinds of challenges do you think India will face in using the growing population in its favor?
See, India's problem is we are not able to undertake structural transformation. Structural transformation means moving people away from the land, from working the land. We have too many people who are working in farms today. So we need to take those people away from farms. See, what we have been doing is we have been creating a lot of jobs in, say, IT services. Like if you look at just the top 5 IT firms, you look at TCS, you look at Infosys, Wipro, HCL and Tech Mahindra. These 5 people alone today, I think employ something like 16 lakh people. And they employ more than even our army, our defense forces or say the railways. But who can work in these companies? everybody cannot be a software coder, right? So we need to be able to create jobs for our farmers' children, for our farm laborers' children. And those kind of jobs can only be created in manufacturing. And that's precisely what China did. China managed to get a lot of people away from farms to work in very large, huge manufacturing industries, whether it is textiles, even for example, you look at, say, Apple, right? You look at Apple, whether it is an Apple or a Tesla, their factories in China employ, millions. We should create maximum jobs in manufacturing, things like, say, healthcare. So basically, kids who pass out of class 10 should be able to find jobs. That is going to be our challenge. How do we create jobs in manufacturing, and how do we replicate what China has done? And again, that is another opportunity, because the world wants to decouple from China, because everybody put all their factories, everything in China. China became sort of a factory for the world. But now with geopolitics and all, I think so probably that is the other opportunity. So apart from demographic, I think we are also hitting a geopolitical sweet spot. So India needs to do a lot of hard work in the next 2 decades to harness this demographic dividend, which China did in the 80s to 2000s. And before that, even Japan did, Korea did, Germany did, all these countries. So we need to learn from economic history.
And in the end, we talk about how a minister's comment on Ramcharitmanas in Bihar could impact the local politics on a larger scale. Ramcharitmanas is an epic poem composed by the 16th century Indian poet Tulsidas. And last week, Bihar's Education Minister Chandrashekhar from the Rashtriya Janata Dal or RJD said that the Ramcharitmanas promoted social discrimination. And this sparked a debate not only between the RJD and the BJP, but also inside the ruling alliance of JDU and RJD. In this segment, the Indian Express's Santosh Singh explains the context of these comments, how various parties have reacted to it, and what it means for the future of Bihar's current Grand Alliance or Mahagathbandhan. So Santosh, can you describe the whole Ramcharitmanas comments by Bihar's Education Minister Chandrasekhar that has sparked these controversies?
It was last week during convocation function of Nalanda Open University. He was invited as chief guest, and during his speech at the convocation function, he just referred to Ramcharitmanas and said that some verses of Ramcharitmanas such as ढोल गवार शूद्र पशुनारी ये सब हैं सकल ताड़ना के अधिकारी and one more such verse he quoted from Ramcharitmanas, and in that context he said M.S. Govalkar, a bunch of thoughts, and Manusmriti and Ramcharitmanas, these are divisive verses. This is where the controversy is sparked off. He said this, we don't know what was the immediate provocation for just talking about Ramcharitmanas at a convocation function, but education minister, he did so. That's why he invited wrath of the opposition from all around. Even RJD leaders do not agree to his statement.
Right. So you mentioned the wrath of the opposition. Can you tell us some of the major reactions in the aftermath of these comments?
There were outbursts of comments from scores of BJP leaders, starting from Sushil Kumar Modi, Vijay Kumar Sinha, to party spokespersons like Nikhil Anand. Sushil Modi, Rajya Sabha MP and former Deputy Chief Minister, went on to dare Chandrasekhar to speak on Quran, speak on issues like triple talaq, halala, hijab, polygamy. They are just saying they are just trying to create divisions on the lines of religion. RJD leader, the education minister, is hurting popular Hindu sentiments. So he has been under attack since then. Almost all BJP leaders, right from state president Sanjay Jaiswal, he also attacked the education minister, and there are several cases registered against him for his statement in different parts of the state.
And within the party, and here I mean the RJD-JDU alliance government, has anyone come out in support of his comments or publicly opposed it?
It was RJD State President Jagdanand Singh who lent a kind of support to his statement. I just talked about, just referred to the socialist ideology, referred to the social discrimination. And in that context, he said that whatever the Tulsidas said in that context could not be right. And I think RJD leadership does not fully agree to what Chandrashekhar said, but doesn't also disown it. It finally came down to Deputy Chief Minister Tejaswi Yadav to comment on the matter. He just said that the country is guided by the constitution. One has freedom of speech, but at the same time, he did disown Chandrasekhar's statement by saying that one has no right to attack any religion because we respect all religions. So it's RJD is playing a selective politics over it.
Okay, right. So you only mentioned how the RJD reacted. What about other members of the alliance?
Of course, JDU completely differs. Even one JDU MLC and former minister Neeraj Kumar went to Hanuman temple at Patna and he recited verses from Ramcharitmanas. Other JDU leaders, including ministers Ashok Kumar Chaudhary, he just didn't agree with the RJD line and wanted some action be taken against the education minister. So, as an ally, JDU differed. Upendra Kushwaha, JDU leader, also attacked RJD. So, it has been RJD versus JDU as well over the controversy, not just BJP versus the Grand Alliance.
Okay, and in the context of Bihar's politics, what do these comments mean for the alliance?
See, let us do a bit of extrapolation and let us just interpret it. You know, the socialist groups, socialist parties, have no political plank as of now. Now, after there is no issue of Ram Temple, court has settled it. Article 370 has been repealed and Uniform Civil Code has been partially addressed with removal of triple talaq. So what do they have? And if you remember, in last election, 2020 assembly election, Tejaswi Yadav didn't talk about his father's winning slogan of secularism and social justice. It talked about economic justice and 10 lakh jobs. It means RJD wanted to reboot its politics. Now that they are sensing that BJP could play the hardcore Hindutva politics, Ram Temple at Ayodhya would be ready by 2024, BJP might play it up. So they are just trying to offer a counter to Hindutva politics with the politics of, say, caste polarization. Backward, which we say in local parlance, backward versus forward politics. That's why I think that could be the underlying thing of the debate. And it might only rage on as the time progresses.
And you know, Bihar recently began the first ever caste-based census of the state's population. So is there any correlation between that census and these comments?
Yes, that's very relevant and it's linked. What purpose does caste census serve? Because they are just looking for big numbers of OBC and EBC so that they could ask for more quota for these groups. That is the entire politics, entire motto behind the caste census. So it is obviously caste census is the only possible, pliable or whatever adjectives you can give, political plank, potential political plank, the Grand Alliance or RJD or JDU or for that matter entire socialist groups have as of now to offer counter to BJP's politics.
Right. And Santosh, there are reports of some seminars that are going to be organized on Ramcharitmanas now, right?
Yeah. Kishore Kumar, former IPS officer and head of the Bihar State Religious Trust Council, and he's presently the head of Mahavir Temple Trust. He just this week only has convened a seminar. He has also invited education minister to attend it. He said just as there used to be Shastrat in olden days, let us debate it now. He said let there be historical context, there is religious context. You have to see which character of Ramayana or Ramcharitmanas is speaking in what context. So he said let us debate it now and settle it with debate than making allegation and counter allegations.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was hosted by me, Rahel Philippos, and written and produced by Utsha Sarmin and Anviti Singh. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.